But the spirit here, the people here, so many people to thank and appreciate. Oh my God, it's fantastic. I don't know what to say. The hardest part of talking about the pictures that I've taken over the years is getting started. The one thing I want to tell you is, briefly, when I fell in love with my camera, I was 15 years old. I got my first camera, and at that moment, I realized that something very special about photography was going to be a part of my life for years, and it has. I had it as a hobby for years and years and years, photography, and it always really meant a lot to me. Fortunately, I had an opportunity to begin to make a living as a photographer, which this day and age is even more difficult than it was before. So I will show you how it happened, how it came to be. The first thing I did was I had to be in the Army. And when you were an American in the late 50s, early 60s, if you didn't go to graduate school, learn to be a doctor or a lawyer or something, they're going to send you to Vietnam and shoot people and get shot at. That was not my idea of a good time. So I signed up for a program where I became a counterintelligence agent. That's like a spy. That was so much fun. And they sent me to Berlin. And when I was in Berlin, at that moment, the wall was built. The wall went up in 1961. This is one of the photos I made of the wall. What I did then was I sent the photos, and I sent a story about me in Berlin to my local newspaper, and I said, I think you might be interested in a story about a local boy on the front lines of what could be World War III. So they printed all the pictures and the entire story, and they sent me $50, which in 1961 was still $50. But at that moment, I realized that my hobby, people were paying me to do my hobby. And I said, well, if they're paying me to do my hobby, then I think my hobby should be my profession. And that's what happened. So I moved to San Francisco, and I was fortunate to be there during the Summer of Love, 1967. Everybody knows about the hippies and the musicians and all of the great rock stars that came through San Francisco. This was really the most famous song that everybody heard. I'm sure that somebody, maybe Leanne can sing this song for us. It's a very famous song about going to San Francisco and wearing flowers in your hair. Here's a woman with flowers in her hair. Now, she's not just any woman. This is Van Morrison's ex-wife. I thought that would be a good person to show with flowers in her hair. This is what it looked like on Haight Street during the Summer of Love. Everybody came to San Francisco to see a hippie. Nobody knew what a hippie looked like. They were curious. They came from all over the country to see a hippie. There is a hippie. This hippie is selling newspapers. Now, if you buy a newspaper from this hippie, he lets you take his picture. Sometimes the people in the car had a great deal of, what's the word, strength. They decided they would even touch a hippie to see what it was like to touch a hippie. There they are touching a hippie. In San Francisco in those days, there were many, this is Golden Gate Park, which is right near the Haight-Ashbury. There were always free concerts. This is Quicksilver Messenger Service. They would take a truck, a flatbed truck, and they would turn on the amplifiers, and then they would make a free concert. And one after another, every day, there was a free concert. Here's the Grateful Dead doing a free concert in Golden Gate Park. Now, the Grateful Dead was one of San Francisco's favorite bands. I mean, the people who lived in San Francisco loved the Grateful Dead. In Golden Gate Park, every night, these guys, every day, every night, all through the night, all through the day, these guys would play the conga drums. You could hear it. I would try to go to sleep because I didn't live so far away. I would hear the drums. But the good thing about these guys, they shared everything with, especially with the kids. As you can see. They were very sharing people. That's what the 60s was all about. I wonder where he is today. You think he's a banker?
Why not?
This was a Big Brother and the holding company in a small park. And what was really nice about this is that these were a typical crowd, maybe 200 people, so that you could go backstage afterwards, you could get close to the stage. It was very intimate. Afterwards, you could go backstage and get an autograph from Janis Joplin. This is the way I first started photographing music, and why I loved photographing music so much, because I love music and I love the musicians, and it was just a fantastic opportunity. It didn't last very long, unfortunately. This is the first issue of Rolling Stone, the very first issue, #1. It was printed in October of 1967. It's dated November 1967. This is the guy who started Rolling Stone. He started Rolling Stone, Jan Wenner, at age 21. Unbelievable, really. This was my first assignment for Rolling Stone. The Grateful Dead had been arrested by the police for having marijuana in their house. After they were arrested, they gave a press conference. And at the press conference, they tried to explain, look, okay, you can arrest us, but if you arrest everybody who is smoking marijuana in San Francisco, you will have no police, you will have no lawyers, you will have no doctors, you will have no politicians. So why are you picking on us? At this press conference, you see this? That's whipped cream. I don't know how to say whipped cream in Spanish, but it's whipped cream. So what is it? Okay, so now you know what whipped cream is. So what they said is to the media, all of the media who was standing there, they said the first media person who asks a stupid question is going to get a face full of whipped cream. Afterwards, Jan said, look, take the Grateful Dead on the steps of their house and pose them. Well, these guys were so wired after the press conference, you couldn't make a formal picture of them. You know, you can see they had a rifle, they were giving me the finger, they were acting crazy. I was not sure I was going to get out of that place alive, but that's the picture we ran in the first issue of Rolling Stone. This is the first concert for Rolling Stone that I photographed. That's Pete Townsend, obviously, and The Who. What surprised me, because I had never seen The Who before, was when Pete Townsend took his guitar and he threw it against the ground and he broke it into many pieces. And I thought, what's this guy? He's crazy. Why is he breaking his guitar? How's he going to play music? It would be the same if I took my camera, threw it against the ground, broke the glass, broke the camera. How could I take pictures? Well, I didn't know that he had more guitars back in the back. However, last year I received an award from Classic Rock magazine in London. And when I received the award, I brought a camera to the stage and I said, I thanked everybody for the award, and I said, I always wondered, I told them the same story, I said, I always wondered why he did this, and he seemed to enjoy breaking the guitar so much. I think I'm going to break the camera today and see what it feels like. So I broke the camera in front of everybody, and they went crazy. And then, I didn't realize it, but Pete Townsend was in the audience too for me. This was Jimmi Hendrix in an early issue of Rolling Stone. See, this is, we would take the picture and then we would use it in a variety of ways. We'd crop it. I just want to show you how it starts as this and then becomes that. In the early days, the Rolling Stone looked like a newspaper, and we were not successful because it was folded like a newspaper. Eventually, we folded it again to make it look like a magazine, and it became much more successful. You'll see how the shape changes. This is now the one that looks like a magazine. It's the same press, the same printing press, the same paper, but we folded it again to make it look like a magazine, and the sales went much, became very, the sales became bigger. How could I'm losing my brain is, I mean, being here in a beat, you know what happens to your brain. Now, this is interesting because you see, here's the photograph that I gave to the art director, and that's the photograph that we ran. And in those days, before the computers, we actually had to take a knife and cut like this, all around the picture, like that, very carefully, in order to get that cover. It was very primitive based on the way magazines are published these days. This is, of course, my favorite shot of Jimmi Hendrix ever. I was on stage with Jimmi Hendrix in 1968. It was his first appearance at the Fillmore Auditorium in San Francisco. A very magical moment for me. I just cannot tell you how much in tune I was with the band and the music, and some really fantastic pictures came from that session that night. I can't imagine how to make this picture better, because it's really a picture of a musician in ecstasy. I mean, this is why the musicians play. This is why we go to hear the music. This is really a perfect picture. What we had to do, our challenge in those days, this was before MTV, before music video, before YouTube, any of that stuff. We had to show the readers in one picture what it was like to be at the concert. You can imagine, that's not very easy, because they had no other way, if they were not at the concert, to get an idea of what it was like to be there. So this is what the challenge was all the time. This is the cover of the book. The book that there's some copies here, but the book I did for me is really important, because when I have an exhibit of photographs, let's say on the wall, 40 or 50 photographs, people come up to me and they say, what was it like to know Jimmi Hendrix? What was it like to be with Janis Joplin? What was it like? What was it like? And I know I have answers to these questions, but I know that when I leave this planet, the answers are going to go also, but the pictures will stay. But the answers, there's no way to answer it once you're dead, right? So I decided to do a book where I put the answers, the stories behind the pictures, so that when I'm gone, that aspect of the photographs remains. The thing about the stories behind the pictures, it's kind of like, if you don't have the stories, it's like food without seasoning, food without salt, food without, without flavor. This was Frank Zappa. This was a cover of Rolling Stone. I was really nervous about photographing Frank Zappa because he was a creative eccentric, but I got up to his house and we discovered that he had a cave in his house, and he would go into the cave and come out of the cave, and he would go into the cave. And then there were these big machines in the back of his house, and he started climbing up on the machines and driving the machines. Now, the thing about Frank, he died quite young of prostate cancer, but before he died, he was at home, and he had a big piano in his living room, and on the piano were a few things, but also this picture, this particular picture. And according to his friend, he told his friend that this was his favorite picture ever of him. Well, I mean, if it's true, I hope it's true, but when I heard it, it was very touching, you could imagine. This is my ex-wife on the cover of Rolling Stone. It's a long story, I'll tell you privately. This is if you can imagine, this thing is only 4 inches, very small, this machine. And if you can imagine what it does, you might be able to imagine what it does. It holds, like one of those. So what we were doing is, if you took a subscription to Rolling Stone, you would get one of these machines. Generous, huh? Very generous. This was the groupie issue. I noticed when I went backstage with the bands that the women backstage were not just backstage to catch the boys in the band, but these particular women had great style. They spent a lot of time, a lot of money putting themselves together to actually make their own appearance backstage. And I told Jan, I said, I think there's a story here. He agreed, and that story became an entire issue. This is the GTOs, Girls Together Outrageously. And it was a band of Frank Zappa that he put together. It was a band of women who could not sing. They made a CD. It was the worst CD I've ever heard in my life. It ruined my player, actually. This is Pamela DeBar. She's called the Queen of the Groupies. She wrote a book called I'm With the Band, and she told all the stories about all the guys that she was with during that period of time, the 60s and 70s. I mean, it's the whole story if you want to know what it's like to be a groupie. that's the book to read. These were the plaster casters of Chicago. Now this is kind of difficult to explain, but these two girls, they were young girls, they were in their teenagers. They were in art school and they were learning how to do plaster casting. You know how you cast a face or cast a hand? They were learning the art of plaster casting. However, they also loved the musicians. So they decided to put together a very unique idea. They put the plaster and all the machinery that they needed into this little bag, and they would go to the hotel, knock on the door of the musician and say, "We are the plaster casters, we are here to cast you." And they said, "What are you talking about? We don't know what you're talking about." They said, "Well, let us come in and we'll explain to you what they did." So what they did, and I hope that I don't offend anybody with this answer, this young woman performed oral sex on the musician. This woman mixed up the plaster. When the plaster was ready and when the musician was ready, she put the plaster on the guy and made a cast. Now these casts actually exist. I've seen them. She had an art show. Not only that, she was, as I said, was a teenager then. Now she's in her mid-50s. She's still casting. But now she's doing both jobs. This was our first Christmas card from Rolling Stone. I mean, we were having a great time, as you can see. I mean, what magazine would send out a picture of somebody smoking a joint as a Christmas card? Creedence Clearwater Revival with John Fogerty. That's the cover shot. That was the photograph. And then that was the concert that evening, where, you know, for me, that's John Fogerty, like being an evangelist. You know, he's preaching music to the congregation. But look how joyous they all were. Everybody just, I mean, that's what happened. Fans love musicians. There's just no question about it. Jerry Garcia, that was the cover of Rolling Stone. Finally, we did, are there some deadheads here? Yeah, I knew, okay. Good to know. This was the shot. Now the thing about this, they asked me, okay, how do you want to photograph Jerry? How do you want to photograph the Grateful Dead? I said, well, bring him to the studio and I'll photograph them individually, one by one, much using a single light like Richard Avedon used to do. That was one of my hero photographers. So that's what I did. This is an important picture because I took this picture and I took it home and I looked at his hand and I said, what is he, how can he do that with his finger? I couldn't do that with my finger. And then shortly thereafter, I heard the story that when he was 5 years old, he was holding some wood with his brother. They were in the backyard, he and his brother. He was holding wood, they were chopping wood, and his brother said, hold the wood here, chopped his finger off. So that is the first time he ever showed publicly that he had a missing finger. So it's a really important picture. This is the cover of Woodstock. Woodstock, everybody knows what Woodstock was. This was going to Woodstock. This is what I saw as I headed over to Woodstock to photograph the concert. Mile after mile of people walking, people driving. It was quite amazing, actually. And there's an organization called the Hog Farm, and they were from New Mexico, and they were supposed to feed the people and provide the security, but nobody had any idea there would be 300,000 people. But Woodstock took place in an area of dairy farms. After the concert was over, when it was finished, the cows were so traumatized by the hippies and the music, for 1 month they gave no milk. These guys tried for an hour to get milk from this cow. No milk. This is an area back in the woods next to where the stage was and the people. This is where a lot of the people were camping with tents. This is also the place where if you wanted to buy something to make your senses a little bit expanded, you could go back there and buy. This is when the concert became free. More people came to Woodstock than had tickets. So they started pushing down the fence. The fence wasn't very strong. And the promoters, to their credit, said, okay, we're going to make the concert free because we don't want any violence. We want people to enjoy the music, so come on in. Everybody came in. This is the view from the stage at Woodstock, standing in the middle of the stage, looking out at all the people, 300,000 people. My widest lens at the time was not able to include everybody in that picture. It was really, you can't believe it. I mean, yes, you've seen other big concerts since then, but nobody at the time had ever seen such a huge group of people. This is Carlos Santana. Now, Carlos Santana was backstage with Jerry Garcia before this picture was taken. And Jerry Garcia said, look, Carlos, we're not going to go on for quite a while. Let's just get high. And Carlos said, okay, let's get high. And so it's not clear whether they got high on acid or mescaline, but they got high. So after they got high, shortly after they got high, they said to Carlos, okay, you guys, it's time to play. And he was still tripping. I mean, he couldn't even, he had no idea what was going on. So if you ask him, if you look at YouTube, there is an interview with him where he says, the guitar was like a steel snake. It was moving around. I couldn't control the snake. He said, I looked out in the audience and I saw 300,000 pair of eyes. I saw 300,000 set of teeth. I didn't know where the music was. It was going out of my guitar, up through the amplifiers, coming back, hitting me. I had no idea what I was doing. The fact is, though, they played a fantastic set. And it was really Santana's presence at Woodstock that started their career. That's me backstage at Woodstock with Carlos in the background. I had to prove I was there. You know, some people say, oh yeah, I was at Woodstock. I said, yeah, prove it. Now I can prove it. This is an interesting picture. These were the light towers, and there were light and speakers on the top of this tower. And if you notice, there is this guy right here. He's totally naked, right? Okay, so at the end of the year, there was a book called Encyclopedia Britannica. This was before digital or anything like that. And they said that they called me up and they said, we need some pictures from Woodstock. Please send us some. So I had to send prints. You couldn't send digital in those days. You had to actually send a print. So this is the picture that they actually put in Encyclopedia Britannica to accompany the story about Woodstock. So after they ran the picture, they sent the print back. See if you see anything different here. Can you tell? They put some underpants on that guy. Can you believe that? It's the way it was. It's not the way it is. It's the way it was. This is what happened to those intimate concerts that I photographed in the Haight-Ashbury and in Golden Gate Park. They became very big. This is one of the wonderful series called Day on the Green, which Bill Graham produced. Fantastic concerts, really. But so many people. It was nothing like the intimate concerts that I photographed in the Haight. Each time they put on a concert, they build these fantastic sets. It was a real party for everybody. Everybody loved it, but it was completely different than the way it was in Golden Gate Park. This is the first time I photographed AC/DC. Angus Young and Bon Scott was still alive then. He was a character. He was really, I don't know if you like AC/DC. Before I photographed them, I had never even heard of them, and then I saw them, and I was like, these guys are pretty good, you know? And now, I don't know if Black Eyes, did Black Eyes come through Spain, that whole big production that they did? It's fantastic. Angus Young, who'd ever seen a guy on the floor playing a guitar? I'd never seen anything like that. This is a typical Day on the Green. Peter Tosh from Bob Marley, Eddie Money, I don't know if you know that band, Santana and the Rolling Stones. Total price, down here, $12.50. $12.50 to see the Rolling Stones. Can you believe it? And this was Mick Jagger's birthday, actually, and Bill Graham, the producer again, made the big lips supposedly as a birthday present for Jagger and the Rolling Stones. This was the first time I'd actually been on the stage with the Rolling Stones. The perspective that you see from the stage is different than you see from the front of the stage. And you know, you can put the relationship between the musician and the audience in the picture. Carlos, that same day, Santana, Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page, that outfit, that dragon outfit, is now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Ohio. Robert Plant, of course. Jimmy and Robert. These are all Jimmy Page's guitars. Before they came out, I saw them all lined up like that, and I thought, wow, that's a pretty good picture. I mean, just as a still life. And then I took the picture, and about a couple of years ago, because I'm friends with Jimmy now, I showed him that picture. He said, I've never seen that before. I gotta have that. That is an amazing, those were all of the guitars that he used in that concert that day. That particular concert, by the way, was the last concert ever in the United States. There was a big fight between the security of Led Zeppelin and the security of Bill Graham, and Bill Graham said, you are never coming back to the States again. And they broke up shortly thereafter. This is a light show. We used to have light shows, liquid light shows at the concerts. Now what they were, if you can imagine, these things that water and oil doesn't mix. So these amoeba-like things were always moving around. It's hard to show and it's still photographed, but, okay, so they had overhead projector here. They have a glass bowl. In the bowl is water, and then they put, as you can see here, colored oil on top of it. And so it sits on top of the water, and they start moving the glass bowl to the rhythm of the music. And so not only do you get high from the music, not only do you get high from, if you're at the Fillmore, the air in the Fillmore, that, you know, you can imagine why you're getting high there, but you're also getting high from the visual. It was the most amazing experience, these liquid light shows. And these are just some of my favorite photos that just some of the ones I really love. Steve Miller. Steve Miller, in 1967, the Steve Miller Band, they gave him $50,000 in 1967 to sign with Capitol Records. That was a lot of money. So I went to take some pictures of him, and they, yes, where are you going? Huh? Okay, give me a kiss. Wow. Anybody that wants to do that can do that after. But so I was at his house, and I just saw this feather, and I said, oh, Steve, pick the feather up and hold that. So it was a very successful photo. It went on the cover of the album, and then they made a billboard in LA, which is pretty cool. Everybody knows who that is. I think Jim Morrison, in case you don't know. More Jim Morrison. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. That was the first time I photographed the Rolling Stones. I kind of like the relationship in the photo between Mick and Keith, for whatever reason. This is when Mick Jagger made the announcement that they were going to give a free concert in San Francisco. This was after Woodstock, and it was a good gesture. It was a great plan. It was a great idea. The trouble is, it was supposed to be in Golden Gate Park, but in the end, the city said, no, you cannot do it in Golden Gate Park. Then it was supposed to be in another venue, and they had the stage built, and the owners of the other venue said, no, you cannot do it here. Finally, they went to this little racetrack out in the middle of nowhere called Altamont, which is what that is, and that was the beginning of that disastrous concert called Altamont, where some people died. It was very violent. It was a bad, bad, bad scene. Jonny Cash. I love this shot of Jonny Cash. Many years ago, I had an exhibit of my photos, and somebody came up and said, oh, I love that picture of Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash, which is his wife. And I said, I see Johnny Cash. Where's June Carter Cash? And she said, oh, she's back there, back there. And that was 40 years after I took the picture, and I had never seen June in that picture. That woman, you know, opened my eyes to my own picture. Pink Floyd, the first time they came to the Bay Area, San Francisco, the first time they actually came to the States. Little Richard. Anybody know who that is?
Clapton.
Who?
Clapton.
Clapton, exactly. Most people don't recognize Clapton in that outfit. That was with Cream. Bob Dylan when he became a born-again Christian. Dwayne Allman. Now, I happen to be, I don't know if, did any of you know the Allman Brothers band? Yeah. Okay, well, they were a southern rock band in the US, very, very, very successful. I happened to be in the studio the very first day they came together as a band. And so I shot this picture, and then I shot this picture, and this was the manager. And so this Greg Allman, this year, this guy, he did a biography, and they called me for the picture. They said, we want to see the panoramic picture. We want to use the panoramic picture that you took. I said, I didn't take a panoramic picture. Well, what had happened was the manager had taken those two pictures and glued them together and put them in a frame so everybody thought it was a panoramic. And when I realized what had happened, with the magic of digital, which we all know we can do these days, I actually made then the panoramic picture, which is really, I mean, if you care about the Allman Brothers, this was an amazing moment in their history. Miles Davis with his wife, then wife, Betty Davis. She was also a musician. She turned him on to Jimmi Hendrix. She was a fashionista. She got him to start dressing well. Miles loved the box. He went 2 or 3 times a week to the boxing ring in New York. And one day I was there, and he said, "Come on, Baron." He said, "You know how you had the throat candy there, Baron? You are out of shape, man. You come on, we're going to the ring. You're going to get in the ring with me. I'm going to get you into shape." So we drove in his Ferrari over to the ring, and I was really worried that he was going to make me go into a boxing ring with him, but he didn't. This is Nathan Beauregard. He was over 100 years old at this time. Wow. He was born blind. He had been playing music all his life, and he came out on that day and played again and sang again. It was so moving. You know, I can't explain how wonderful that moment was. Muddy Waters, T-Bone Walker. I'm sure you've heard of some of these. You've probably heard of some of these blues guys. B.B. King, of course. I love B.B. King. This is Fats Domino getting ready in Las Vegas backstage with a lot of bling bling. Timothy Leary, who, you know, the LSD king, he came to Rolling Stone's office and he said, "Please, I want to be the governor of California. Will you please support my candidacy as governor of California?" And we thought about it for about 3 minutes and decided that probably wasn't a good idea. Joan Baez, you know, a really special person. Special woman, from the music to the politics to her heart and soul. Taj Mahal, I think he plays in Europe quite a bit. Everybody in those days was flashing the peace sign because we wanted the Vietnam War to be over. This was a summer solstice festival, you know, when the even days of the year. This is Tom Morello, you know, that at the time he was playing for Audio Slave, but Tom Morello is a fantastic guitarist and also a very, very much of an activist, a peace activist. Mick Jagger saying goodbye to the crowd. Goodbye, Mick. Keith Richards saying goodbye to the crowd. I mean, I love this photograph because, you know, that's another one of those magic moments, those archetypical moments of a musician at the peak of the guitar, yeah. This is Jimmi Hendrix saying goodbye to all of you, looking right at you, and that's the end. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was very complicated getting Baron to come here. Baron has heard about Ibiza for like 40 or 50 years, whatever. And I'm really glad that we're able to bring him here for the first time. And I'm really glad we're able to bring him to Ibiza Rocks. It's fantastic. But thank you all. Thank you all for coming.
One more thing. Daniel Miller promised me that if I came to Ibiza, my life would change. This would be a life-changing experience. It already has begun, for sure.
Byron, thank you very, very much. And Daniel, thanks very much for bringing Byron. I just want to let everybody know that before you all go home and everything, we've got all the pictures here. We have pictures for sale, starting from €20, which are going to be signed by Byron right here. And then they go right up till, you know, there's a different level. Start from 20 up till as many thousands as you want to pay. There's pictures here for everybody, so just get on there and have a look and see if you want to take something home. Thank you very, very much, Byron. Thank you, Daniel. And thank you, Ibiza Rocks House and Pikes Hotel.